Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly at tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today we are discussing a lovely current generation Rolex Oyster Perpetual Day-Date. This is the reference 128238, 36 millimeters in yellow gold. This is a gem set watch. Now the timepiece measures 12.1 millimeters thick from lug to lug, 43.4 millimeters. If we include the end links of the President bracelet, the total distance across the wrist is 44.8 millimeters, and there is a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. We'll throw this watch on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and you can see it fits well. I've always liked the 36 millimeter Rolex case size, and I think particularly with something that is as glamorous and visually loud as this watch, having it in a traditional size helps to counterbalance the audacity of the dial and the gold. Now you can see it's a good fit on my wrist. I think you could wear this watch on a wrist as small as 13 centimeters circumference, so it's suitable for him and for her. You can also see, being only 12.1 millimeters thick with a sloped bezel, it'll slide easily underneath the cuff, and it's nowhere near the edge of my wrist. You can see that well. It's also nicely counterbalanced by the combination of heavy bracelet and clasp, so if you do want to wear it loose, it's not going to move around a lot. Now, the President bracelet was born with the Day-Date back in the mid-1950s. While the watch is often described as the Rolex President, that's a nickname. The bracelet, however, is properly named the President. And you can see it has the three-link joinery of the Oyster Sports bracelet with the short profiles of the Jubilee links. But what I find is that it's got the physical integrity of the Oyster for active use, and then it's got the supple small link feel of the Jubilee. But you can also see that it's got a lot of little gaps between the links, and that's there to avoid pinching your skin, pulling your hair, or trapping wrist heat. Now, removable links are fixed by screws, and you can see there are many on both sides, so you're going to get a precise fit. And we have a conforming end link, so there's no gap between bracelet and case. You can also see there's a little bit of taper to bracelet, polished centers, satin flanks, and polished outer faces. Taking a quick look at the clasp, you can see it's thick gauge gold, and it's more complex than meets the eye. So you have a beak and hook system, so it actually snaps shut. Now, older crown clasps, as these are called, because the crown is the only sign of the partition point. Older crown clasps were snapped together and held by friction, whereas this one is held by a locking system. So there is a measure of sophistication in there. Taking one last look at the case flank, you can see it's beautifully fluid, nicely tapered, polished on its flanks, polished on its tops. There's a little bit of a top-to-bottom rounded profile, so this is not the sheer super case that you find on the sports watches. Here we have a faceted bezel in yellow gold. Faceting, a longtime feature of gold bezels at Rolex. Recently, platinum was added to the list, but it twinkles like a cut gem, as you can see, undiminished, never touched by the refinisher's wheel. Superb condition. We have a twin lock crown in gold. You know this because 2 dots means the crown is gold and twin lock. Screw down crown, 100-meter water resistance, Rolex making every part of the watch, the dial, the case, the bracelet, the clasp, all of it, and the movement, which means that Rolex has its own foundry. It makes its bracelets and clasps and cases, and it makes its own dials. The process of gem setting at Rolex is the last truly handcrafted fabrication process at the manufacturer. While the movements are put into the case manually, for the most part, the rest of the watch is assembled by automated or machine-assisted methodology, whereas the gem setting is done entirely by hand using techniques that would have been familiar to 19th century gem setters and jewelers. That is why the gem set Rolex watches are still considered handmade. Now here we have a dial that is a base of gold onto which brilliant cut diamonds are fixed using little gold pincers set by firing, and molten pincers become solid pincers, and we'll get a little bit closer so you can see what I mean. But essentially every diamond is clasped together by an outcropping of gold that is assembled using manual techniques and a torch. We also have little baguette sapphires that are in rainbow colors, and these are lovely and handsome. As you can see, there's a nice gradient between them so that they transition evenly and progressively as we scope 360 degrees of the dial. Now, the watch is a Day-Date. It is a double quick set, so you can see that you have the ability to set the date and the day instantaneously. There is a stop seconds function. See the Rolex and Day-Date nameplates here in solid gold, solid caseback, Oyster caseback, Again, water-resistant watch, inside caliber 3255, manufacturer movement, bidirectional winding, 70-hour power reserve. It will make it to 72, but Rolex advertises 70. It has a full balance bridge with a free sprung index to make it more shock tolerant and easier to adjust precisely. A handmade Breguet overcoil hairspring, so it keeps even time in every position, and is more adept at earning a COSC chronometer certification, which this movement has. The spring is also, the hairspring that is also made of a blue oxidized niobium zirconium alloy that Rolex calls Parachrom Blue. It is highly anti-magnetic. Rolex also uses a rotor ball bearing rather than the previous jeweled staff design because the ball bearing on this bidirectional winding system is more shock tolerant than a jeweled staff. Now, Rolex goes above and beyond the COSC chronometer certification, testing the watch in 6 positions, fully cased up to run no worse than +2, -2 seconds per 24 hours. That is the basis for that term, superlative chronometer. You will note, although the watch is a superlative chronometer, you don't get the tome that Rolex typically publishes on its dials on these gem set models. Addition by subtraction. Finally, the movement beats away at 28,800 vibrations per hour, and it pivots on 31 joules. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.